Hello everybody, welcome back to some more Curious Expedition 2. I haven't played this game in a while, but they had a new DLC come out, the Highlands of Avalon, so absolutely amazing. So I'm just going to give you a quick song and dance routine here and give you a little bit of details about the DLC. Not everything there, but just enough to kind of wet your palate. Right? So I played through it before on the toughest difficulty. I'm not trying to flex here or anything else, but I do want to point out is that the game seems to be a little bit easier. I got the highest score with being super rusty, and that was kind of weird. But anyways, I feel like if you got beaten up by the game before and it was a little bit too tough, I would try it again because the new stuff they added into the game kind of make it a little bit easier, and also you can probably adjust your strategy a little bit more to help yourself out. So this DLC might help you make things go a little bit more smoother. So it's well worth coming back and checking it out. And so let me get started with the game, and then you can actually see what's new with it, and also I'll talk about some things that are kind of the same, but it works out. And the one thing that you should note that hasn't changed so far is that there is no new main explorers quite yet in this DLC, so you're still stuck with the standard 8 main explorers you could use. That isn't bad, but that's just something you should probably be aware of. And here at the main hub, where you go between missions, nothing's really changed here either. It's still the same as I could tell before. The only change here at the main hub is at the Avalon Society, where you now can get to rank 17 in the unlocks here. There's also 4 new unlocks you can take. You can find these items mostly out in the wild, except unlocking the Grail Knight, but honestly, most of the stuff you can find out there. These can be unlocked eventually over time at the club, but they will take you a little time. And when you do decide to start an expedition, here you can actually pick one of the missions always will be the one going to the Highlands, other than actually the main story quest itself. But you can actually go to the Highlands every time, and that is the green book with the Grail there is marked. But every time you have the opportunity to go out there, so you don't have to worry about you might not be able to see it. So it's refreshing to see it all the time, but at the same time I could see where it can kind of be abused, but we'll talk more about that a little later on. And as always, you pull up on a ship onto the island, and the islands are beautifully done, as you can see here. They're supposed to represent kind of like Scotland, if you want to think about, where it has a lot of rocky hills, got some forests, got some marshlands, as well as lots of waterways. It's beautifully done, and I kind of like it. I think they upgraded the graphics quite a bit, but this kind of type of build, you would definitely want to be using a climber build if you can find one. And here in the Highlands, there's actually new things you can actually discover, which are like wishing wells. You see right here. Wishing wells act kind of like a loot box where you can kind of pass a green and red check. If you can climb inside, you can actually get items out of there. Sometimes it's gems, sometimes it's food, but it's worth doing if you have the green and red to do it. The downside is that if you fail, you catch an injury and you get like a sprained ankle. So it's always well worth sending your main explorer in there since they can't take affection, but that's usually the key there. But the best part about the wishing well itself is that it acts like a shop, and every time from I could tell, the wishing well always carries starfruit here. As you can see up here, starfruit are just god tier food. So it's basically like a mango, but it's better. So not as cheap, but at the same time it provides 15 sanity. It also has fame on there, but it perishes way too quickly to actually be taken back, so you might as well just eat it. But it's a great place to pick up some goods, but I have not seen stuff on sale there, so don't expect to be finding a good sale there, but just get some starfruit. They're absolutely delicious. Eat them right away. And the box art itself for the DLC, or the face I assume, is the lake serpent, or basically it's a Loch Ness monster if you want to say. So it's something you can fight if you want, but generally if you visit it, you can give it items, and when you give it items to a certain, you offer it something like this, is that it will give you back some treasure, and every time the treasure is well worth it. So if you got some goods that you do not want and you need some treasure, just hand over as much treasure as you can. And giving it extra items doesn't really seem to produce better or worse, not from I can tell, but you know what? You might as well just give it the items, because if you want a gold necklace or something of high fame value, it's awesome. Just make it happen. And there's new things out here too, like, oh god, like pixies. Oh, I hate pixies. you'll see them out there. They're kind of like the mosquitoes of the Highlands, except they steal your stuff when you walk through there. So be careful about that and just ignore them if you can. But they're annoying. And for things that are about the same with the game already, it's the shrines themselves. The shrines are just essentially temples, just with Stonehenge kind of looking things, but they essentially work the same way as before. So the main key is don't rob them unless you're really ballsy. So that's that's a main key. But then the art for the villagers, it's completely different too. The villagers act the same as before. They're just now wearing kilts and have orange hair now. So it's always fun to see their artwork, work out differently here. But the villagers are exactly the same from what I could tell. There's, they each have their own quirks and do their own things, but it's not bad. It's always good to see something different. See a different environment here. So. And the same familiar tones as Curious Expedition 2 kind of follow with the village. It's, has a new artwork there. It looks very nice, and I do appreciate it. But it's essentially the exact same thing as before. So you can still trade here, you can still rest here, you can still talk to a ruler, and do different things here. But it's not too different from anything you haven't experienced before. The artwork looks really nice. And it's a very familiar tone, as you've seen before. But I haven't noticed anything too differently here. But the familiarity will kind of keep going on, but at the same time change as you want to recruit new party members. So here, from what I could tell, you can't recruit these people at the tavern itself. You can only recruit them here at the native areas. So you have like a tattoo warrior if you want, or you have an islander priest or a scoundrel. So you have new characters. There's also, spiritual priest, and there's also the bard itself. They all have slightly different things, but honestly, it depends on what you want. So the tattoo warrior, +6 from combat, it's not too bad. Increased damage from, if you're using a pickish weapon, it's alright. If you're a fighting combo, this might be a good guy to have. He's a red and green dice specialist, but nothing that I am kind of too overly excited about. He does alright. Islander priest, alright. It does alright. If you want max sanity, it's kind of like a monk, if you want to say. But it doesn't add any of the bonuses to there. It's probably one of the weakest ones I could tell. So, it's good for a crowd control type of character if you want to weaken and damage things, but it's not my favorite. But from what I could tell from the actual, out of the 3 that you see up here, the scoundrel is probably the best out of all of them, because one, you get climb costs -1, and you also get a search challenge bonus +1, which is absurd. It's basically like free search challenge, red dice, and it actually does really good. It's like a really good crowd control character itself. Targets all enemies with most of its attacks. I think its best level, like when you max it out, its main dice is kind of terrible, but most of it's pretty good. So the scoundrel out of these 3 are probably the best. But there are others you can also recruit too if you go to other places. Like they'll have the tattoo warrior again sometimes. The spiritual druid, which is basically, you've seen it before. It's a priest that eats mushrooms. But they're alright. They're kind of like a healer class, if anything, but it's definitely not my favorite from overall, so it's not that. The bard is interesting because you get that climb cost -1, and then also the search challenge. Plus, if you want a green damage dice, it does pretty well. So you could probably pair it up with the corgi and make things happen. So it's not a bad thing. It's more of a, if you're worried about somebody with shields, you could really take them down because poison bypasses shield. So the bard is a really interesting character. Bard and the scoundrel are the 2 I'd probably take just for the bonuses. The tattoo warrior might be next, but the priests are pretty weak in my opinion. But speaking of recruits, something you could recruit before in the taverns already, you should take a look at again for the Highlands of Avalon, is that you want to actually think about the donkey itself. The donkey add-on here is that 2 extra days to move with tar before being stopped. I guess that might be a new feature. I haven't experienced this before, but the reduced costs in climbing plateaus and climb cost is absolutely amazing, especially for the Highlands. If you're going through there every time, you can pretty much move a lot more with the donkey, and then you can add a mount to it or to reduce your travel costs. Oh, it's absolutely god tier. So if you need red dice to kind of balance your party out, get the donkey. But let's not forget about the trade items. One of the best new items in the game is the stone fragment. You can usually get at any village, and it's absolutely god tier. You have to pick these up, especially if you haven't explored the map. So what it does when you do click on it, show you where a rest site is at. So it would be a mission, waterfall, springs, or anything, or another village like that. If you keep clicking on it and nothing shows up and it doesn't get used, then that means everything has been found out. So at that point, it just becomes a really good item for trading. And of course, there's actually a new item here, the bagpipes, which is awesome. It's a pretty good weapon, has a chance to stun, does poison. You know, it's not bad. I haven't upgraded it all the way, but it's in the game and it sounds atrocious, but it actually is a pretty viable weapon if you want a green dice sort of weapon. Just listen to this beauty. And one last item to show off, and this is the magnifying glass. This does come from the Avalon Club Society, but you can find these out in the wild too. It is a search bonus challenge item, and it's absolutely god tier, especially if you're just searching through temples or shipwrecks or anything else like that. This is one of those things you gotta have. Just kind of carry it around, and it just works great. So, well worth getting. And that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about the Highlands of Avalon DLC here. You know, look, the map looks beautiful. Everything kind of works out pretty good. It's more Curious Expedition 2. I mean, what else more could you want? So there's plenty more to the game, but I just don't want to spoil all the little extra events you could possibly get. So this is kind of just like a quick summary of the important details you probably want to know about. But anyways, the main thing here is that this DLC makes the game slightly easier because you could just prepare for the Highlands of Avalon, you know, quest every mission except, you know, story expeditions, but, you know, that's beside the point, you know. So otherwise, it's a solid DLC for $5. Pick it up, you know, enjoy it. It's if you enjoyed Curious Expedition 2 or even Curious Expedition 1, this is just more goodness for what you want. But anyways, if you want to know more about this gameplay, let's go ahead and drop something down in the comment and I can tell you more about it. I'm just kind of giving you the base level details of what you should expect out from this DLC. It looks beautiful, it runs pretty good, I can't really complain too much. So until then, have a good one,